Thanks for tuning in to the Medevac Podcast, powered by the Robert Irvine Foundation, whose mission is to support and strengthen the physical and mental well-being of our nation's heroes. I'm one of your hosts, David Reid.
And I'm your other host, Christian Meyers. Thank you very much for joining us today on the Medevac Podcast. If you're new here, there's a price for the show. You have to share it with a friend or family member if you get something out of today's episode. And that's an order.
That's a standing order.
Lawful. I think it's a lawful order, right?
Comments, questions, we love it all. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification button.
Yeah,
right?
Make sure you update those notifications. Interact with us on our Instagram. It's the easiest way to reach myself and Dave. Stay up to date on all the new episodes, and you can interact with us directly right on there during some of our live episodes.
Amazing. Who is our guest today?
Our guest today is Nina Guerra. She is a 10-year Marine Corps veteran. She did signals intelligence for that entire duration, and she is now attending a doctorate program to get her PhD in clinical psychology. So welcome, Nina. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah,
thanks so much. I think we have a reoccurring theme on this show where we really dive into the mental health and wellness of those who've served this country and our first responders as well. So excellent. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course.
Awesome.
That, I think we have a different trending topic too. It's just badass veterans who are doing cool things after the military.
Yeah, and on top of that, you have a nonprofit that you started about a year ago. Mm-hmm. So we'll dive into that as well. Yeah. So it's excellent seeing fellow veterans who continue to serve. And you're freshly out. 2021 is when you got into the military.
Yeah.
So let's rewind it back a few years and dive into the story of how you got introduced to the Marines, like what motivated you into becoming a Marine.
Yeah. Funny story. I was going to Texas Tech for like a semester there. And I came back during the spring semester and I said to my family, I think I'm going to join the military. And they were just like, what the fuck?
Whoa.
And I was like, no, I'm serious. And like, I actually went to go talk. I really, honestly, I just didn't want to pay for college. And I really, at the time, I'm like, I'll just do like the military for 4 years, get my degree, and like,
absolutely,
it's a good trade.
Like, it'll whatever.
Yeah.
And I went to talk to like all of the branches. I was like very like try to be very calculated in my decision.
Of course.
And then I just like pulled the trigger and it was like, I think if I'm gonna do it, I think I'm just gonna like be a Marine.
Nice.
So that was like my mentality then, and then and then I did it, and I at the time and I did, like, as soon as I could, like, enroll in college, I did, and I finished, like, my degree in psychology, and then I really enjoyed what I was doing in, like, the signals intelligence field, and I decided did it again. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that was really it. I don't know what came over me. I really did
It's interesting, too, because you joined in 2011, and, obviously the stories that you hear, I mean, people are coming back banged up. We're in the second surge at this point. Things are getting wild. And I'm just curious as to, like, what gives you that courage to know that, hey, we're joining in a time of war, like 10 years in. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, and I think at the time, like, I was kind of like null to all of that. When we talk about counterterrorism at that time, like, all I knew was like 9/11.
Okay.
And I did have an uncle who was in and out before, like, right after 9/11, and then out before my time came to join.
Okay.
So I knew, like, he was a Marine, but I didn't really know anything about it. So as I was, like, going to pick jobs, like, my recruiter was just like, hey, like, you could pretty much do anything. Like, you got a good enough ASVAB score. Yeah. He's like, what do you think about, like, Intel? I was like, whatever. Like, when can I leave? Like, I was really just like,
just
hey,
ready to
I just want to, like, what's going to get me out? What's going to get me, like, and he told me too, he's like, you can't just like start college right away. There's like this period, you have to go to like training, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, like, so when can I leave? So I didn't know anything about the Intel field at all. I was like, I kind of just like trusted him. I was like, yeah, sure. He's like, I don't know anything either. He's like, but it sounds cool.
Something with radios, I don't know.
And that's what I did. And I mean, again, like, I still didn't really like know exactly what the job was until like finally, like, after all the training.
So after your training, let's talk about the difference in definition that you had. So going into Intel, what did you think it looked like? And then once you finish your training, what was that realistic approach after?
Yeah. So like when I was in boot camp, they pull you aside and they like tell you like, I don't know, like when the monitor pulls you aside and says like, this is what your job could be in the signals field or in the intel field. And at that time he was like, how good are you at math? And like, I'm in boot camp. I'm like, like what kind? Like, dude, I haven't slept. Like, I think I'm good enough.
We're talking trig here.
Yeah. I was like, and he was like, well, we're thinking about like putting you in like GeoInt and like you can make maps and like look at like imagery type stuff.
Yeah.
And I really didn't know. I knew nothing about the intel field. I guess like you look at like, I don't know, like some shows and you're thinking like some like covert stuff.
Yeah, James Bond. Mission
But
Impossible.
even then I was like, it can't be like that.
Yeah. So what did that look like once you got that badge on? How did it turn? Right. It's the same kind of misconception that we get like with police officers. Like we're going to be in car chases and gunfights all the time, and they're like, it's 90% paperwork.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was it. So I didn't go to GeoInt. I got to like finish boot camp, finish like our additional like Marine combat training. And then like we get our like assignments, and I was like, oh, you're going to go to like SIGINT school in Florida. I was like, oh, okay. I thought I was going to like Virginia, but whatever.
Yeah. Langley to be a spy.
I was like, I don't know. So I went and did that, and I really hated the school. Like, I was really boring. It was like signals, like learning how to demodulate signals.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is this even? Like, none of this makes sense. Like, this doesn't seem like what I want to do. And our instructors had kind of told us, like, this isn't it. The curriculum's very outdated. And I'm like, why are we learning this?
And why are you teaching us this outdated stuff? Yeah.
So it wasn't until like I got to Camp Pendleton to where like learning about, and I'm like a very hands-on person. Like I'm like I've always loved the outdoors. I'm like, I played sports. Like I didn't want to sit behind a desk either.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what they said. It's like, well, you know, like if you're a female, you're probably going to be an analyst, and you're going to like sit behind it. You're going to go to a skiff, be in a secured building, and just like sit behind a computer and like write reports.
Yeah.
But the guys get to like do this like collection type stuff and like work with the gear.
How did that make you feel?
I mean, I was like, and this again, like I'm a very like just I guess like a rough person too. I was like, that doesn't make any sense.
That makes no sense.
Like this is dumb.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see about that.
Yeah. If anything, you would think that women have the ability to be a little bit more analytical.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I did. Like, I will say the first couple of years, like, I really did ruffle a lot of feathers. Like, I was just like, no, I'm not going to do this. Like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
What does it take to do that? So, like, the attitude and, like, the discipline thing wasn't there for me really yet at the few beginning years of it. But, yeah, so I got there and I was like, well, I want to learn how to use the gear. I want to learn how to do this. I want to learn, like, more hands-on stuff.
Do the
so I kind of just like made the guys, like I bugged them enough to like they would teach me.
Nice.
And they did. Like I still talk to some of those guys today too, and even then they'd be like, damn, you're a handful. Like God. But I'm really proud of that, because then it opened up a lot of opportunities for me once I just was like wouldn't take no for an answer.
Yeah.
So I got to do some of like that more hands-on like collection style training, like when we did like field events. I got to do a lot of that instead of just like, and I had to learn both. They still like made you learn how to do like report writing and the analytical type stuff, networking type things. But just me, like the will to want to like learn more and like just kind of like not take no for an answer. Then I learned how to do it like tactfully in a way that like, make it seem like it's their idea.
Yeah.
So I got a little better at that.
Yeah.
I got a little better at that over the years, but like I said, it led me to like a lot more opportunities. Like the deployments I went on were all like individual augments. So like I didn't have very like traditional Marine Corps deployments.
Yeah, very unique for Marine Corps.
So I got to like a lot of them were just like with either JSOC, NSA, or like OGA. So again, it opened up a lot of doors for me. Just knowing that I knew the collection side of it, so I knew how we were like collecting, and I knew how to like analyze, report, and like disseminate. So
yeah,
that makes sense. So for our audience, sorry, words are hard today. For our audience who doesn't know what signals intelligence is, can you give a little background information on what type of collections you guys do and what it's actually used for?
Yeah, so pretty much like anything in the signals environment, where it's like phones, so like like it used to be like GSM, CDMA, so any type of like cellular signals. Yeah. It was a lot of like push to talk in the beginning stages of like when we were in Afghanistan. So that's just like walkie-talkie radios. And then it's kind of like transformed into, it could also be like networking. So like
access
network,
to servers.
yeah, access to servers, network exploitation. So it's like just like a wide range of things. In like other branches, they're very specialized of like, no, they just do like networking. They just do cellular. They just do this.
As the Marines do, it's kind of just a
You just
surf
gotta
and
know it
turf, of just collection. So you gather this data up, and I want to talk about, like, I know we're fast forwarding a little bit, but in this 10-year span, how did that mission change? I mean, you go from push to talk in 2011 to just this data influx. Yeah. How do you stay on top of that?
Yeah, so it really started with like, I did a lot of like work in Afghanistan doing like push to talk, trying to find like just like which is still kind of, it can be intricate if you don't really understand like the theories and like how like the signals are being transferred, if I can say that. And then it like evolved into like, we're going into like now Iraq and Syria, where they have a little bit more of a robust like actual like network.
Yeah.
So now we're going into like, we're looking at more we're looking at their like social media, and then we're looking at their different like digital network interface type stuff.
Sure.
So it changed a lot. And then now, even then, like at the end of my career, I went back to Afghanistan. So like I started there, like thought that was over, and then I went back there, and I was there a year before we kind of like shut down.
Okay.
I was there like all of 2020, and then I was back doing like push to talk again, trying to find like just like very like just like they would had a lot of burner phone like that just like kind of like that basic stuff. But on top of that, it was also like, how can we exploit them like on their digital network? So it was just a different, and how to stay on top of it. It's mainly like a lot of courses. So like we work a lot with like NSA, so we have to like stay on top of like all of that.
Sure. All the hottest tech. I'm sure it's updating
and honestly,
daily.
it's like, it's crazy that like I'm going through this program, this doctoral program right now, and I still remember things that it's like, I have no use for this information anymore. And I'm having trouble like learning this, like retaining this. And then I think back, it's like, how did I retain all of this like theory and like all of this just like report, like all of these like basic informations of like, oh, I know that this goes in like every single report line. How do I just remember that then?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of like training. It's a lot. It's like, and
constant
education, and like what we do learn in our like basic, school, it's not at all like what we actually do. And then it depends like kind of what route you go on. If you're like more of the collector, you do a lot of field training with the equipment. So it was like learning the equipment, the intricacies of the equipment, and learning like what the like, okay, like if I want to span this, okay, I'm looking for a cell phone and it's this range and I use this equipment if I'm doing this, like, so it's just like knowing all of that. And then on top of like it's also just like actual networking. It's like, oh, I know I need to work with this office here and there.
Yeah.
So
was it a lot of eye-opepening technology?
A lot of just like eye-opening concepts.
You're just like, wow, I didn't.
Yeah,
understand.
I was like, I had going back to like when I was like, I'll do Intel, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And to like now, it's like, it's insane that I've like got to have all those opportunities. Like, and of sheer like, I wanted to go open contract if that was going to get me out of the door sooner.
Yeah.
So the way that it kind of just fell into place, and like it was, I don't know, it was just very like serendipitous. I don't even know what the right word is. It's just very crazy.
Sounds like it worked out really well for you.
It did. It worked out really well. And like, I'm just really glad that I did have an opportunity to work with like a lot of these like 3-letter organizations and like do all the things that I've gotten to do. It's just been very like eye-opening across the board.
The secret scroll part of it.
It's
pretty exciting in its own way.
It is.
Yeah.
So without diving too much into OPSEC, obviously you can't talk about a lot of things, but what are some of the highlights of your career in the Marines? Like whether it was being a part of capturing or finding a bad guy, like what are some highlights that obviously you're sitting behind a desk a lot, but there's got to be something that motivated you to stay for 10 years.
Yeah. I think definitely the just playing a part, I guess, in I guess like if you could say the entire roll up part. So it's just like finding, and then I get to like pass it off and it's fixed and finished. So just like those successful operations were really cool. Like, oh, I get to like name this objective, whatever.
And you kind of get to pass the ball to the next guys to go finish it off.
Yeah,
right?
I think that was really cool, and like being able to put something that I can confidently say, like, here you go. And also very nerve wracking.
Yeah.
Because it's like,
I bet.
You also just like never know.
Well, that information's what we base our decisions off of. It can be the difference between life and death on an operation, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that was pretty awesome. That's kind of what kept me going, and then just like and then like also then like it building that like the trust amongst like your team too. It's like, well, this is like, and it's many times like I'm the only like signature too, so it's like they kind of like gotta trust me.
Yeah.
So it's like, here you go.
Have to be right.
Yeah. But like I was able to do my job because it was like a mutual kind of thing, you know.
So overall, it was a great time and you definitely feel like you're a part of a team.
Yeah.
That was great. So 2021 rolls along. Why did you decide to cap it out at 10 years?
Yeah. So I knew I wanted to do the PhD program. I didn't know that I wanted to do the nonprofit stuff, but I knew, and it's a 5-year program.
Okay.
So I was like, well, like, I don't want to do this for 10 more years. I know what it looks like for me.
Yeah.
There was not going to be a whole lot of individual augments anymore.
No, it's just overarching admin at that point.
Yeah. As I progressed, like I kind of knew what that looked like. And I could have probably continued to like not take no for an answer and be be that person. But I was kind of also just like really tired of doing that. I was like really like desensitized to a lot. Very just like emotionally calloused as well.
Like what specifically?
Just like everyday things. Like I even joked to like my family and friends, it's like, I'm not ready to reintegrate back into society.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that I would mesh very well at this point. Like I said that after like my first enlistment, and I didn't feel ready to like rejoin society.
And that's an interesting, I don't want to brush past that part because I think it's a huge aspect of what probably motivated you to go into clinical psychology as well. So when we talk about reintegration, what do you mean specifically by that? Is it that team environment? Is it that there is a feeling of misunderstanding from everybody who hasn't experienced that, or what's the emotions kind of going through your head?
Yeah, definitely both. And I'm going through it now. So I guess I knew I'd go through it at some point, but I felt a little bit more prepared to go through it now.
Sure.
But then it was both. It was like leaving, like, a very like tight knit team. Also, like just the banter, the camaraderie, all of it. I knew I wasn't going to get it out. Like I knew that was just going to be gone. And I guess that I'd also seen people like get out and like struggle and like go off the deep end too.
Yeah.
Like people that like I had as a young Marine, like looking up to them and like knowing like, oh wow, like what happened?
Yeah, you look at those guys like they're so squared away.
Yeah, and they just get out and it's a whole nother world. And I also felt like that really sucks.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really thrived in that team environment. I really enjoyed it. And that's what I just wasn't ready to like leave yet. And then the 10-year mark comes around and I was kind of just like tired too.
Yeah.
Like I said, I really couldn't do it. I was tired of playing the game as well. Like it was exhausting.
It got really political too towards the end.
Yeah. It's just like, and it was really exhausting too. Even like on the like state side as well. It's like when I'm just like a chronic overachiever as well. So it's like when you're operate at that level and then you start to deviate from that baseline, everybody's like, well, what's wrong?
Yeah.
And it's like, nothing's wrong. I'm kind of just tired.
Just burned out.
So I was burnt out. My mental health was like non-existent. And even then I was studying psychology and I still was not really taking care of myself.
Yeah.
So I knew I just wasn't doing it. I was like drinking way too much. I was like, so all of it, I was just kind of just done.
Yeah.
And even after that last trip out to Afghanistan, once I came home too, I felt even like more done. So yeah, and it that was all of 2020, and then I get out in the fall of 2021.
And then this is just in the midst of COVID.
Yeah. COVID.
Just a cherry on top there.
I left and COVID was not a thing. I get over there and it's like, what is going on?
World's falling apart.
Yeah. So let's talk about that motivation into clinical psychology. Obviously, the military had a huge aspect of that. Did you have interest prior to?
No, I wanted to be a lawyer for like the longest time.
Okay. And
then I joined the military and I finished just like my associates, just got the core classes out of the way, and then it was time to like pick a major. And what I really enjoyed was like the counseling and mentoring aspect of the military. I loved like that personal and professional development, helping people. Like this was around the time when like the Marines implemented the pull-up policy. So we used to do like a flexed arm hang, and then we started doing pull-ups. So like even just small things of like helping like other female Marines, like, oh, this is like what I'm doing. Like, let's try to do this. That's not working. Let's try to do this. So like helping people set those like small attainable goals and like seeing it through. I really enjoyed that. So I was like, oh yeah, I think I'll study psychology. I don't really know what I'll do with it at that point. And then once I finished that, I started a master's program while I was still in. Okay. And then I just knew, I'm like, okay, I want to be a clinical psychologist. And that requires a doctoral degree. Yeah. So
did you continue your master's degree while you were in?
I did, yeah. Okay. I continued that, and which like, you don't really need that to go into like a PhD doctoral level program, but it was kind of just like,
certainly helps.
Yeah, it helped. I got to learn a lot more of like specific, like I took one course on just mindfulness psychology, one course on like positive psychology, one course in abnormal psych. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I really enjoy like the literature and all of it. So.
Yeah. Did you use any of the tuition programs for that?
Yeah, I used tuition assistance while I was in, and then now I'm using my GI Bill.
Nice. So you used it for your associates up to your master's? Or?
Pretty much.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
Well, I didn't really need to use it for the associates because I'm a Texas resident.
Oh, okay.
So there's
Hazelwood.
like the Hazelwood Act, and like I still had the Pell Grant then. I pretty much used tuition assistance the entire time I was in the military.
Sounds to me like you had intelligence going in before, because we talk about this all the time, is the opportunities that the military has for continuing education within it. You should at the very least get out of the military on a 4-year term with an associate.
I agree. And I was like, by proxy, at the time, they wasn't a thing, but they're like, oh, you're going to be the education NCO. Yeah. Because I was like the only one going to school, and like that, and that's what led me to it too. I loved like, hey guys, like, and a lot in the intel field, we have a lot of linguists. So a lot of those guys, like, they leave like DLI, their language school, with the equivalent of associates. It's just a matter of like, okay, you have to do the legwork. You got to like call some people. You got to like send some emails.
What do we say all the time is, and I hear this with the complaints with the VA system is, yes, their timelines suck, but it's all about doing the paperwork. Yeah. And a lot of people just expect it to be done for them.
Yeah. It's not due diligence. You have to take the steps.
You have to
get the care at the backside. It's
so that's kind of like, I was always trying to encourage people to like, and I still do it now with some of my friends that are in and out. I'm like, well, what about this? Like, what about this avenue? If you need help, I remember I would help. Like then as Marines were transitioning out, I was like, well, have you applied for this program? Did you know you could use this? Hey, like, let's just sit down and like look up this, like, where you want to go to school here? What do you want to make? Like, so I really enjoyed doing that then. And
that's the building blocks too of counseling people through this. Now, when you got out of the military, you were going through your master's program currently. So I always love to ask the question of reintegration into the civilian world. The biggest thing for me and countless other veterans that I talk to is the lack of accountability now. You're all of a sudden you get these orders that say you're out of the military, and then there's a huge crash in a sense of purpose.
Oh yeah.
So like, thank goodness that you had, the master's program where you still were diving into with fellow students and stuff like that. But did you feel that?
Yeah. So when I got out, so I did all my education online, like undergrad and master's online. And then when I got out, I actually, I was doing the Skill Bridge program. I don't know if you guys have heard about that.
Absolutely.
So I did the Skill Bridge program, and I went to go work in Charleston South Carolina, with a company who provides the program of record collection gear to the Marine Corps.
Oh.
So I had worked with this company before, like I'd seen them. They trained me on the gear.
Oh, cool.
I did the skill bridge with them, and then I got hired on with them. So I was still kind of like, I got to see the backs, the kind of behind the curtain of like how the gear is made, like how they put it in all the Pelican cases, accounting for it all, get trained on it, and then I got to go train Marines.
That's
so
pretty
I got
cool.
to go out to like Hawaii and like train these young Sigget Marines on like the gear, like the new gear.
Yeah.
So I did that for a year before I started this program in 2022, last fall. So that I still had a little bit of that like motivation and purpose. I was around a bunch of like they were all Marines.
Yeah.
So it was cool. Nothing really changed. It wasn't until I started this program up in Dallas last fall that I was like, what is going on? Like that first semester. So this past fall was my first semester, and I like really struggled mentally. It was like went from taking like 1 to 2 classes a semester at my own pace to 5 classes, full-time student.
Oh, yeah.
The only veteran, the oldest one in the room, and also I am so used to being the only woman in the room, a bunch of women. Yeah. I didn't know. I was like, I don't know how to deal with all this.
Yeah. Interesting.
So it was a lot, and it's the mindset completely different.
Yeah.
Completely different. And I was...
How so?
Well, they came most of them come straight from undergrad. So I think like the average age is like 25.
So a lot of immaturity.
I don't want to. Sorry, guys. If they're going to listen, I don't want to say immaturity. I think it's just a lack of experience.
Life experience.
Life
right?
experience.
Yeah. Which is the definition of immaturity.
Yeah. But I mean,
just
like,
say it a nicer
I will say
way.
that, like, if I was me at 23 going through this program, no way.
Yeah.
I was immature, very immature.
Yeah.
I was not worried about. Even though I was going to school at 23, it was again totally
Very
different.
Yeah.
I was thrown into this, fully immersed into like psychology, the field of clinical psychology, 5 classes. Like my attention was shot, my memory. I'm like, what is going on with me? And I wasn't used to that. And I mean, I did well. I passed all my classes. But it was a very big disconnect. I went in there like in all of our more like discussion-based classes, like diversity. I'm like, oh, I know who I am. I know what I want. I have opinions about all of these things. And then I'm in a room with people who just probably haven't formulated opinions about those things yet.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of weird when you're the only one like, oh, well, I feel so strongly about this, and that. And then it's just like you and the professor like going back and forth.
No one else is chiming in?
No, I got some like onesies and twosies. They do chime in, but it's. I guess it's not what I expected. I expected like a whole bunch of.
With the way people talk about their opinions these days, I figured that would be like pretty hot.
Yeah,
going on in college,
and
right?
maybe it's the field, maybe it is the age, maybe like I don't know, but no, there's not a lot of speaking your mind. I think I'm like I joke all the time. I'm like, oh my god, am I too aggressive? Like,
Yeah, well, I think that's how the most learning happens, is asking the questions, because it's all malleable. It's all ever changing, and especially like in today's world, psychology's got to be a nightmare.
oh yeah,
I can only imagine.
Yeah, so and we could spend a whole episode or 2 or 3 on this, but as far as the instructing goes, what do you think was the biggest misconception to psychology that you have?
The biggest misconception.
Yeah, it's like meaning when you're going in, you think you're going to be learning this, and this, but you're learning this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah. Well, I thought that we'd be learning just like right out the bat, going like, oh, we're going to learn CBT, we're going to learn these like theoretical orientations, we're going to learn how to do this and that. And it was kind of like more of like, no, we get like to the root of like a lot of these things, like developmentally, like we go all the way back to the lifespan.
Yeah.
And it's like, well,
and what certain age brackets are hitting in their developmental phase of things.
Yeah. So we were going like way back, and like we start at like childhood, and it's like, okay, well, like chromosomally, genetically, like, and then we talk about like also like looking back at like the genetics that are being passed down. So it's like, what is even like which I'm a nerd about this too, but just even thinking about like when a woman is pregnant, like what can be passed down through the placenta. So like if they're just like have a high stress pregnancy, that gets passed down to the placenta.
Yeah.
So they're already like predisposed to things like anxiety and depression. So just like learning about that. Like,
so like, I mean, just hot button topic with everything that you're learning, nature versus nurture.
Nature versus nurture. Yeah. And it's both. Like it doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah.
It's definitely both. It's just like, and I'm really big on this too. It's like we need to look at the full picture, right? Even when we talk about veterans, like, well, yeah, we can talk about their military career, but what was happening before their military career that could have just like exasperated like these symptoms.
We have an interesting statistic for you. It's all special operations members have childhood trauma.
Yeah,
I would say
most
100% of the ones that we've talked to.
Yeah, abandonment issues, and we look at how, especially how people are facing adversity. And, you know, we've had over 80 plus interviews at this point for just this podcast alone, not to mention what we do with the Robert Irvine Foundation, helping thousands of veterans out there. But like, it's crazy to think that adversity is kind of, you're going through adversity, and the way you deal with that is based off of a lot of childhood trauma.
Yeah, it's a lot of like trauma responses and like just a lot of like learned behavior and like so that's kind of like what I think blew my mind too, is like, yeah, we can't just talk about their military career. We have to like peel back a lot of layers.
Yeah, and it's interesting too is that it's all about mindset as well. As the way I process this specific event has to do with the emotion that I'm feeling at this point.
Oh yeah, perception and like your even the memories that we have. Like a lot of the memories that like we hold on to are like a product of like high arousal events, whether that's good or bad. That could be trauma.
Yeah.
That could just be a very like positive, happy event as well.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's associated with trauma.
Yeah, the
So,
relative
like,
emotion.
Yeah,
right?
so we hold on to those memories, and we hold on to a lot of like those go into like play into triggers, and then those play into like responses, and all of it's linked back to like maybe one event, maybe several events. But yeah, then like we develop all of these just coping mechanisms, and we don't know that that's what they are, but to maybe drown it out, to maybe deal with it, and it kind of they just stack up onto each other.
That makes sense. I don't want to go too far off topic from where we're at right now, but you guys mentioned nature versus nurture. There's an awesome documentary that came out a few years ago called Three Brothers. Have you seen this?
No,
It was
I have not.
three triplets who in the 80s, they were all separated
Yes.
from a foster home. So they were separated, sent out to 3 different families, and they followed up with the families for 20 plus years.
Wow.
So doing check-ins, and the kids never knew that they had brothers related. And so they were testing the nature versus nurture outcome because obviously they're genetically identical. And then they end up in very different family environments. Well, they end up finding each other when they're in college.
Wow.
So one student, he ends up going to a college that his long lost brother was going to, runs into a guy and says, "Hey, what's going on, Adam?" He's like, "My name's Mark." "And hi, Adam." He goes, "No, you're Adam." End up finding his brother. They find the third brother, and they come together, and there's so many similarities. Like they all end up smoking the same brand of cigarettes, and they all have the same hobbies, and they're all football stars playing the same position, but they have very different family environments. And it's a very interesting documentary on nature versus nurture. It's heartbreaking because it turns out they did this to like 50 or 60 different families. It was absolutely terrible, but it's a very interesting documentary on nature versus nurture that really hits that topic really well.
Yeah.
Sorry, way out of left field.
No, I think that's great. Just totally on topic too, because you have to take into account the environment, what they're teaching, what school they're going to, all this stuff. So you within that documentary too, you also see the vast differences between them.
Yeah, major differences.
Favorite colors, things like that, where it's just like that environment that you were raised in. So I think it's very interesting. And within your studies, you've had to have just really thought about your military experience within this. And what are some of the kind of, I guess, alignment that you're seeing a lot of these military veterans who are getting out of the military, what they're facing while you're going through your schools and, your clinical application? what are the commonalities that you're seeing in the veteran space?
I think that, well, the common factor, if like I had to like put my finger on it, is just the lack of like actual knowledge of mental health. Like we don't really, I didn't even like studying it. Like I don't really know what mental health is. Like I didn't know what mental health is. I didn't really know what it could do for me. And also just, there's just a lack of like, especially in our field, there's like this, like, it can be, there's just like this, like, oh, if you go to mental health, you will not get to do these things. You will lose your security clearance. You won't go on deployments. You won't, you'll lose these trainings. And that is like in one part true, because I've sat in the room when we're racking, stacking, and choosing where people are going to go. It's like, yeah, no, that guy's going through this. Like, let's not do that. Or like, no, he like, and I've also sat in the room where we have psychologists, like our MFLAC, our military family counselor, come in and like brief on like what's going on in like these Marines, like in their counseling. So it's like, where's the trust as well? Like for me as well, it's like, I don't want to go tell this therapist, like share anything with them if I know it's going to get back to like my command.
Yeah, there's consequences, right?
Yeah. So it's like for one,
decentivizing.
So, so for one, it's like, that is like, yeah, there are a lot of just like lack of like actual knowledge, but I think it's like more of a systemic thing. Like we don't really tackle it very well. We don't talk about it. We push this like, yeah, no, like you just have to like, you have a job to do.
Yeah.
So it's like we get really good at just like compartmentalizing so well.
Yeah.
But then we never really unpack it. We never go back to unpack it. And if it starts to come up, then like that's where the unhealthy coping mechanisms come up. As far as like what I'm learning and what can be applied, I think, and this is like my big push right now, in the clinical psychology field as a whole, veterans are not seen as a diversity group, and I believe that we are a diversity group.
Interesting.
If we're going to take the time to like dissect, like, oh well, like the LGBTQ plus community, the Hispanic community, the Black community, like all of these races and all of like the like disabilities, like if we're taking the time to like be culturally competent in all of these fields, why are we not taking the time to be culturally competent in like with veterans?
Absolutely.
So
That's a great point.
This is like my fire right now. I just wrote like a whole paper on it. Just like, that's why, like, I'm not going to quote any statistics, but it's an insane rate that like veterans won't ever go to the second, like they'll go to their intake appointment for mental health and they won't go back to this first one, or they won't go to the second one. And it's one of the main reasons they give is like a lack of like understanding. And it's like they would rather have like see a peer support mentor, see somebody who's not licensed, than see somebody who is licensed and like talk about all these things that like they may or may not ever understand.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. I think the military, and you could say the same, especially coming from Marines, right, is you are ingrained into a way of thinking that, your brothers and sisters, your left and right, everybody outside of that it's not your problem. So when you talk about peer-to-peer, that's how veterans look at things is why am I going to listen to you if you've not experienced what I've experienced? Absolutely. So they kind of give up on that.
Yeah. And to be quite honest, like I've had that happen to me as well, where I've even tried to go to therapy and it's just like, it's not working. And like, I'm like, what is it? And I'm like, this guy just doesn't get it. Yeah. And why do I have to re-explain why do I have to like explain everything? Why should any of us have to re-explain everything to somebody who probably will never get it? They can try. And I'm not saying that there are therapists and psychologists who are not veterans who cannot make a difference. I think that they still can make a difference. But it's just like, are you taking the time to, read up and learn about the military culture before you go to the VA? The VA is the number one employer for entry-level psychologists. So it's like, it's more of a numbers thing. They're also going to take who they can. Yeah. And as an entry-level psychologist, it's like the benefits are there. Like it's a secure job security. Yeah. And I guess my issue with it is like, but are you doing like, what did you do to prepare to go to a VA? Like, what did you do to prepare for like just being culturally competent for veterans? Yeah. So I think that's like a really big issue that I'm seeing, especially like right now in the field, and the lack of veterans going to see mental health veterans, not even like we're not even talking about active duty because that's a whole nother bubble where it's just like, I don't want to, if I know this is going to get back to like the people making the decisions for the things that I get to do, I don't want to share these things.
It can end your career.
It could
in moments,
So that's one issue. Now the veteran issue aside, it's like, it's like we have all of these like nonprofits and we have all these organizations now, all of these things, but the numbers have not like subsided.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, they're going back up.
Yeah. So I don't know what the answer is, but I know for sure like that is one of them. The lack of like.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I was just in Poland, and everything is, and this might be a little off topic, but everything is plastered in SHARP. Army SHARP training, which is the sexual harassment prevention, right? And those numbers are going up too. And it's like, have we not learned at this point? Like, what is going on? There's so much education out there. Yeah. Where is the discrepancy?
Yeah. No, yeah. I was at the back end too. I was like a sexual assault victims advocate. So like even going through the training for all of that, like I could just almost couldn't even believe the numbers. And I know we sit through the training and we talk about it, but then like when I went to go through the training myself, I was like, this is insane because it's all like green on green, if you will. Like it's not like civilians coming in. Like it's all like we're doing it to ourselves. Yeah. Like we're doing it to each other.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And the number is staggering for women is 10%. Like 10% have an experience, and this is just what's reported, right? I mean,
that's reported.
It's like saying 1 out of every 10 female military service members out there have gotten at some point in their career, which is probably 20% higher than that?
Yeah, probably.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, so like, every other soldier, and that's staggering to me. So, like, what are we doing to implement some of these new procedures into the military?
Yeah,
harsher consequences.
Off with their hands, 12 years.
12 years dungeon.
12 years
like
dungeon,
that's
no trial.
what they do, right? Like the mass punishment, harsher consequences. And it's like, that's not working. And it's like, we can say that it's like, is it a mental health thing? I would argue that, it is a mental health thing. And something as simple as just like being vulnerable and talking about things, which is another thing we just don't do.
Yeah.
So it's like, you hear the term mental health and some people will write it off. It's like, whatever, I don't want to talk to people about my problems. It's like, you don't have to talk to people, but are you talking to your partner? Are you talking to your spouse?
You have to do something.
Like, are you talking at all?
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. We see all of these. Read about all of these cases too, and I don't know. Like it's baffling to me. That is a whole nother thing. When then we throw in like, and what I think about it too is like you throw in like the high rate of alcohol abuse in the military, the high, and because it's the only legal coping mechanism that we like resort to, right? Like
that amplifies people's negative emotions. It reduces your inhibitions. It's not a good a good crutch.
Yeah, and it wasn't until like I took a hard look at like how I was abusing alcohol that I was like, this is like doing more damage to me in the long run.
Yeah, and you don't even realize it.
Yeah, you don't, and it like I don't know where. I was listening to this somewhere else, and they were talking about how like alcohol is like in the military too. It's just like a badge of honor kind of thing.
Absolutely,
it's like
that's society. That's American society. I think that goes beyond the military in that we glorify the use of alcohol. Yeah. It's like every celebration you're expected to drink. It is considered weird
if you're not
if you don't drink.
Yeah. And I don't drink, and I get shit for it all the time. Like. When we're out at events, networking events, if we're at celebrations, they'll pass out drinks. They pass me one, like, no thanks. Everyone looks at me like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Like, you an alcoholic? Like, no, I just don't like being drunk anymore. Like, I just don't like the way it makes me feel.
And that was really it for me too. It was like, dang, like I was just being like, I was an asshole. It's like, I don't want to do this.
That's another reason I stopped drinking, because I was such a dick.
Glad to see that stuff down inside.
Compartmentalize that one, right?
Yeah. So it's like, we don't really talk about that enough too. And that is like a cultural thing. Even if it's before, like I come from a very traditional Hispanic community where that is all, it's very heavy. And it's like praised in a way too. It's like, oh, they can't handle their alcohol. Well, they cannot.
Is like, oh, well, I could do 7 shots, and you're just I
can drink you under the table.
What is that? Is that something we should be proud of?
No. No, what was it? And again, like I won't sit here and be like, oh yeah, like that. I would never. Like, no, I've been there myself before too, and I
did it a lot.
Did it a lot, and I actually was like, dang, I don't like this version of myself. Like, this is not who I am. And for me, it was a coping mechanism. It was a way to just being so high strung. It's like, I don't want to be in control anymore. Like, I feel like I have to be in control every part of the day. So it's like, no, I want to lose control. I don't want to be. I just want to. I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
So that's what it was for me, 100%. And I know that I'm not the only one. Like, I know that there are other people who are going through the same thing. We didn't talk about it. Instead, we just laughed about it, joked about it, and just praised it.
Yeah. We make dark jokes.
Turned it into a competition. Yeah. So it's like,
have another drink.
It's like,
Life sucks, huh?
Living
Cheers.
the dream. Yeah.
That's an interesting one too. I think alcohol is definitely a masking element. You know, we want to stuff it down with brown, as I always say, you know. But I kind of want to rewind it back to your paper on just making this veteran community a group. And I want to see what your salient characteristics are that are the arguments of that. Like, why should it be a diversity group?
Yeah, well, first off, in this paper, I submitted it to the APA, American Psychological Association. So that's our governing body.
Yeah.
It was an ethics writing competition. So I submitted it, and I'll hear back in May if it got approved for publication and all that. So that would be a really big deal if it did.
That would.
But the whole purpose of the paper is really increasing awareness and cultural competency for psychologists, current licensed psychologists, because the percent that are veterans is very little.
Sure.
I think it was 6% last time I checked.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So just so that it's just there's a lack of cultural competency.
But I mean, you know, we could also look at other diversity groups and see that there are much smaller numbers.
Oh yeah.
You know, in the LGBTQA plus community, is 1%.
I don't know.
Whatever, statistics aside.
And I think I don't know about that one. Also, because I think it also has to do with if they check whatever that box may be, if they identify that way. So I don't know that number, but for the Hispanic community, that's Hispanic psychologist, licensed psychologist. That's 8%. So the numbers they start to go up a little bit more if we look at race.
Yeah.
But if you look at especially as it's the argument that I'm making, that's it does. I'm not saying veterans, you got to go get a PhD and go be a psychologist.
Yeah, sure.
But the main argument there is actually reaching out, psychologists working with more peer support organizations where that can be just an option for veterans.
Yeah.
Especially where we have all of these nonprofits who may not have started off as veteran nonprofits, but have incorporated that oh, now we're going to serve veterans in this capacity.
Yeah.
It's that's awesome. That's great. And the funding's there if you can write grants for it and all of that.
Yeah.
But it's but what are you doing to make sure that you have a team that is ready to treat these veterans and ready to be there to support them? So that's my argument, is just first off, just seeing veterans as a diversity group, because I think we are probably one of the most diverse groups ever.
Yeah.
At least in this population.
The most diverse minority group.
Yeah.
Right?
So
and it's trackable. That's the thing too, is that the numbers have been tracked for years.
Yeah.
So it's a great control group to look at as well.
Yeah. And I'll kind of just throw this in there as well. That's the big part of the nonprofit is our motto is bringing horses, veterans, and the community together. So it's showing the community what veterans can offer, and have and then also helping veterans redefine their purpose.
Yeah.
Yes.
Within the community. So it's we are not every veteran has PTSD. Not every veteran checks, not every veteran is disabled.
Yeah.
Could they be? Maybe, right? Do we all maybe have some sort of anxiety going on? Probably. Who knows? But I think that society may have this preconceived notion of veterans, and I don't think that's necessarily true.
I think even veterans have a preconceived notion of veterans.
Yeah,
right. over the past couple of years, we've thought everything has been relative to PTSD. Like, yeah, it's PTSD, when a lot of it has been undiagnosed or misdiagnosed TBIs, which are massively different.
Oh, that is the new version of PTS that we were facing 20 years ago. You know, I mean,
PTSD,
went from shell shock to PTSD, and that was like the focal point in mental health.
Yeah.
And now, like with micro concussions and these TBIs, we're at a whole new playing field.
Oh, yeah.
We realize, like, oh, it's not from the stuff you saw, it's from all the blows to your head.
Yeah.
And that's where we talk about abnormal psychology at this time.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm going with dissertation. Like, my population is going to be TBI. And incorporating a mindfulness approach.
Interesting.
To veterans who, when the time comes, like, I'll need veteran participants. So who have had TBIs.
Yeah. Well,
I think we've all had a couple.
I know, right? So, but yeah, that, because especially when you look at PTSD and you think about the symptoms and you look at the PTSD symptoms like anxiety, irritability, depression, all of that, it's like, those are all like, okay, we can tackle all of these things, right?
Yes.
Like we can find some sort of approach. When you're talking about physical trauma to the brain, it's a lot harder. Like, you know, like your cognitive functions are impaired.
Yeah.
So like, what do we need to do to like get down to the nitty gritty?
well, I think it's the pre-therapy at that point, right?
Yeah.
Is now we have to address the physical aspect. And we could talk about this with HBOT. We could talk about this with psychedelic therapies. But repairing the brain to a near normal function and then going after those other approaches, CBT, you know, somatic quieting, these kind of therapies, it's just another layer, right?
Yeah. So I think as well, like I'm interested, like, so my field of interest is neuropsychology, clinical neuropsychology. But I want, like, for me, I don't want to do talk therapy. That's why I started the ranch too, for equine assisted therapy. I think it could only get you so far as well.
Agreed.
And I hear from the other psychologists as well that, like, some of our professors, that they'll see clients for 10 years, like, and it's more of like, oh, maybe I see them once a month. They'll go a few months and they come back. And it's like, I want to help you understand how your brain is wired, so that you have a good understanding of how to help yourself. I don't want to be. I want to help people help themselves. I don't want to. You know, I don't want to have to. I don't want that relationship. I want people to be self-sufficient.
Well, that's kind of defeating the purpose, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the equivalent of taking your car to a mechanic once a month. Like, I'll get the problems fixed eventually, but just tinker a little bit every month. And like, no, like, go get it done. Like, put the time in, put the effort in, and progress. There's ways beyond it. You don't have to sit there and show up once a month for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not making progress, if you're not putting in the effort, you're not gonna bode results on the back end.
Right. And I believe the key thing is the community part. So it's like, I can see a client for X amount of time, but it's like, where's the follow-up? And specifically when we talk about veterans, because that's the population that, you know, I want to continue to serve.
Yeah.
So it's like, we leave this very team-based, tight-knit organization. We get thrown out. It's like, you can go to talk therapy, you can whatever treatment you choose, but it's like, how are you reintegrating back into society? What's your tribe? Where's your community? And as far as like the ranch goes, it's like, it's like we can go through an 8-week horsemanship program. We can teach you like what the human horse connection is, how you can improve your own communication, your own manage your anxiety, cope with these things through working with the horse. But then, like, after those 8 weeks, it's like, but no, you're a part of the community. Now you're a part of, like, you know, you can come back, you can continue to work with the horses, you can continue to help us train the horses.
So sense of community is a huge aspect of, you know, before we're diving too deeply into these therapies. I think that's exactly it. We talk about this all the time, is that you have to change your environment first before you can implement these changes. If you don't change your environment, you're just going to get sucked right back into it. You know, veterans who get out of the military and they go through what's called avoidance, obviously, with PTS, is I don't want to go into a crowd anymore. I'm not going into windowless buildings. I'm sitting with my, you know, facing the exits and all this stuff. If you're not challenging yourself to overcome these issues, or you're going back to your house and locking yourself in for 10 years, peer to peer is not going to matter.
Yeah.
So we got to change our community, our environment.
Yeah. And I mean, we come like, the military is very, we are collectivists in the military, but then we get back, we're thrown out, and it's like, we want to be individuals. And yeah, I think that to each their own, but as far as like healthy, I believe that healthy relationships drive resiliency. So
that is a true story. I mean, you could study that aspect, and I'm sure you have, where if you don't have a good support system next to you, those are the individuals that really falter from post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
The people that overcome it and become the people that are out there in front of the community, telling people how to overcome their adversity, myself included, is those people that were around you that helped you get out of that environment, you know, that you were in. So
yeah, absolutely.
That hits it right on the head.
Yeah. And I, to be quite honest, like I really didn't see myself, like this wasn't a plan for me to start the nonprofit. I was like I was really close to getting out. And I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I know I'm going to go get this degree, but it's like, but what am I going to, like, what am I really going to do? That's going to like, I got really fired up one day, and I was like, I need to make it some sort of a difference. Like, I can sit here and complain, or I can like find some sort of solution. And I was like, well, and my brother, who's also a Marine, I was like, hey, I like texted him and like texted my mom and texted like, what do you guys think about this? I think I'm just going to start a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And they're just like, at this point, they know me, and they're like, oh yeah, we support you.
Yeah, go for it.
Go for it, do it. And I was like, Googling how to start a nonprofit in Texas.
I love it.
And so what came out of that?
Well, what came out of that was the Rustic Ranch. That's the name of Rustic Ranch Equine Assisted Therapy. Even like I was totally like, didn't really know what I wanted it to be. I was like, I just know that I want to help people figure out what their purpose is. And I felt like I want to do it in the South Texas community because I'm originally from San Antonio. So, I mean, especially when we talk about this, like, this community here and being like military city USA, which I never knew that growing up. I was kind of just like nulled the fact that we had such a heavy military population here. But coming back, I was like, well, it kind of like, I'm from here, so I'm continuing to serve my community, and I'm continuing to serve the veteran community. So I knew I wanted to stay in like this area. And that's kind of what I did. I sold my house. I had a house here in San Antonio. I sold the house. I started looking for properties, and then I got a 25-acre property out in Hondo, which is just an hour west of San Antonio. So I really just like started Googling like what can I do? What veteran resources are there to help me start this? And since then, it's kind of just like we're still pretty small. We're still we're working with another small ranch he's another Marine, and he has horses. So we're working with his horses right now and kind of like just helping. We started with our veteran team, and I got them spun up on like horsemanship. And then now we're starting to work with like this summer I'm trying to implement like a pilot program for veterans. So that I want to like do like a pre-survey, like kind of quality of life, do the horsemanship program, and then like post that. It's more of just like trying to figure out like what's going to work and what's not. And
measuring the impact.
And I kind of want like, I'm open to just like what to hear from the veterans, and like what's worked, what sort of therapy have they been to, what hasn't worked, what is working, that kind of thing.
So this is an 8-week program. What does that program look like?
So,
or the vision?
Yeah, the vision for that too is mainly it really depends. So there's like kind of two avenues. There are veterans down here who do have horsemanship experience, who've grown up on ranches and grew up riding. So for them, it could look very differently. And I am very adamant about this. Like, therapy is like not a one size fits all. So it's going to take a lot. It does take a lot of work to tailor treatment plans. But that's kind of like so it's like, we get a veteran who does have this horsemanship experience, and maybe that looks like helping us train horses. Maybe they do have more riding time. Maybe they have more like ranching experience, so they can help us more of that. And we get a veteran who knows nothing about it, who maybe doesn't even want to ride, but they learn about they still learn so much from the human horse connection, understanding like their herd mentality, how they operate in a herd. And that just looks like learning the horse from head to toe. learning about like the way that they turn their ears, what they're communicating to you. And it's really breaking down those layers of like, yeah, somebody may not be open to talk about these things. And with the horse, like you really you don't have to. And as the future clinician, you can sit here and tell me that you're having an issue communicating or issue with anger, issue with this all day. But now I get to see it play out. Now I can kind of see it in real time.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting question that pops up in my mind is, are you able to see the temperament of the horse and kind of figure out that there's something a little bit deeper to that?
Oh yeah. You see the temperament of the horse, and then you see the temperament of the person.
Yeah.
So it's like you're seeing, it's just like, and a lot of it is like they really do. They pick up on your energy. And I'm not going to go into the science of it, but like they mimic their heartbeat to their, are you a prey? Are you a predator? Like what's going on? And that's kind of like how they kind of sense they're kind of like assessing you and checking you out. So there's a lot going on there, like physiologically, that says a lot to me. And like I said, you don't get that in talk therapy. Yeah, I can like push your buttons and bring up hot topics and see what rise they get out of you and like what emotions are elicited. But like, I don't want to have to do that. Right. Like again, where I'm talking about like helping others help themselves. So it's like, they may not be ready to talk to even another veteran and again, they may not even want to talk to me, and they don't really have to. It's more of like working it out with the horse and building that bond and building that connection with them. I'm just there to kind of step in as needed. It's like, hey, this is not working. Okay, maybe it's not working because it's like your blood pressure's through the roof. Your cortisol, they pick up on that. Your cortisol's through the roof, and like let's take a moment to like try some mindfulness exercises, and let's get back in it, and like let's see if this approach works. And let's see it from this angle.
Yeah, I think that really melts down the average participant as well. We have this conversation in adventure therapy all the time. And I had a misconception of adventure therapy in the beginning, coming from a nonprofit background myself, especially in the early stages. I was like, why are we paying, this amount of money to send these veterans on these trips, like fishing trips and all this stuff? And it took me going out to these events and really realizing what the potential was in these is you're disarming them. Yeah. You're taking that extra layer out, where you're putting them into an environment where, one, they could just fully immerse themselves into that situation. Two, get into a group of other people, that community that is going through this same program, and then the layers melt away. And then all of a sudden you can implement that fire circle where you're able to just break down and talk. And it's easier to do. What we talk about in the beginning of the episode is it's all about the emotion that you're feeling in that moment. If I'm feeling, attacked by PTS and the anxiety and the stress, like, why would I talk about it? I'm already stressed. But now I've had all this day with this horse and this environment, this new situation that I've been in. Now all of a sudden they open up a little bit more.
Oh yeah. And it's just like, also with that, it's just like redefining vulnerability as like using it as a strength.
Yeah.
Because you have to let your guard down at some point with these horses if you want them to let their guard down.
And you can't fake it with a horse.
You really can't. You really can't. And that's another thing too. It's like you might, I think, especially for veterans, they may have some sort of level of like, they know what they need to say to get what they want. Yeah. And that may work well for them, but it's not going to work if like you're really trying to get to the root of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So with the horse, it kind of it takes away, for one, that human kind of, I guess, vulnerability. It's like maybe they're not ready to do that. Yeah. And they just don't really have to with the horse. It's just awesome to see the way it happens. And the way you see people just like melt into the horse as well. So I love it. I'm very passionate about it. I know what it's done for me growing up like around horses, and like that was like an escape for me. So coming full circle, like going back to it, it's just like, it's been awesome to now try to like make this and doing this a nonprofit and sharing that with other people and other veterans.
I can imagine that this has been excellent therapy for yourself.
Oh yeah, I've learned. I mean, like you kind of have to look inward as I'm going through this program, like getting through my degree, like we're learning all of these things, and you take a hard look at yourself and be like, yeah, that's me. You know, I've been through this, I've been through that. You know, I've dealt with childhood trauma. I joined the military. It was all these things were exasperated through my military career, becoming like emotionally callous and like very desensitized. And even when we talk about emotions, like I didn't really have a whole lot of emotion words in my dictionary other than like mad, upset, and sad, and like irritable.
The primary colors.
Like that's it. Yeah. It's like, but then like learning about like anger being a secondary emotion. It's not, but there's all these other things that anger is just like, that's just what we feel. Yeah. But it's what's the real root of that anger? Is that fear? Is that, you know, could it be vulnerability? Could it be like irritability? So there's a lot of other like layers to peel back there. And, so it's opened up a lot in me as well. And especially the nonprofit side of it, because as much as like I enjoyed like public speaking, and I enjoy like, I don't mind standing up in front of people. Now, like this takes like a whole nother level of like marketing and like,
and that's a whole nother.
Me, that's a very big like vulnerability piece for me. I don't want to put myself out there on social media, and like that's been a work in progress for me, because I've never really felt like good at that. Like, so I'm also like, I'm all about like, I have to practice what I'm preaching. Like I'm really big on leading by example. So I'm going to take the steps that like, I know that I need to make sure that like, if I'm not going to ask somebody to do something that I wouldn't do kind of thing. Yeah. So really big on that. But yeah, so like even something like this is out of my comfort zone for me, coming out and like talking about these things, like, and I guess even asking for help, because that's what nonprofit work is. Yeah. And I have been terrible at that. And like, oh wow, I just put myself in this new career field where all I have to do is ask for help and put myself out there. I was like, oh my God, what was I thinking?
Those are the two things I don't want to do.
Yeah. So it's been like a real eye opener for me.
Very steep learning curve.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Adopting business, nonprofit, anything like that. But it's a fun challenge at the same time.
Yeah.
Especially when it's still relative to the community, right? I mean, you're doing two things or three things, I guess, that you love. You're taking three aspects of three different communities you love and kind of smashing them together. It's pretty exciting. Did you grow up riding horses? Is that how you...
Yeah, so I'm from San Antonio, and then I grew up going towards Corpus. Like my family, they always... one of my grandpas like grew up on a cattle ranch. His father was a rancher. So like just growing up in that like ranching environment and like... Again, like that was also, that side of the family was an escape from another very like heavy alcoholic family. Yeah. That like at the time, like those were just my norms. I really didn't like think anything of it. I wouldn't even have called it an escape. It was just like, oh, that's just what I do in the summers. Like, and like looking back, I'm like, wow, that's why, you know, I have these like very fond memories of again, like two high arousal situations where it's like, one instance, it's like there's just a lot of like alcohol going around, a lot of like abuse in sense of like just like, but that was like normal to us. Like we talk about it all the time. I talk about it with some of my family members. It's like, wow, it's like that was just so normal.
It's the 90s, right?
We really wouldn't have thought anything about that. Yeah. And then also going over to that side of the family, which they like really didn't drink very like openly, at least like very often. So I'm like, I had these like two parallels, and as an adult, I'm like, wow, I guess like that was like an escape for me. I didn't really realize like the benefits that had until I was kind of like looking back at it all.
That makes sense. So are you not drinking anymore either? Is that something you've cut out? I
don't really. Yeah. Like I will have a drink like in some social settings. I really do like, I work at a cigar shop part-time. I know, like one day out of the week, like on a Saturday, I work at a cigar shop. So like I enjoy like having a cigar and then like maybe like a glass of like whiskey or bourbon. Yeah. But I'm really nowhere near. Like looking back, I have to say that I'm very proud of myself because I never thought that I would have like this relationship with alcohol. I kind of thought I was like destined to be an alcoholic, to be quite honest. Like
I think a lot of us are.
I was like, this is it for me. I guess it's like I have to feel, and I kind of fell into that as well, like that dark time for myself. Like maybe this is just like how it's supposed to be. Like I'm supposed to feel bad and like shitty and like
not the case so much, right?
Yeah. So I don't drink very often. I will have a drink in some occasions, but definitely like it's really crazy to think that like I can have a drink
and you don't need a second one, right?
Yeah, which if anybody knew me then, like that would be like no.
It's something that we've seen a lot more commonly lately. Is I've talked to a lot of people who are transitioning out or recently transitioned, and it seems to be more of a hot topic. Is a lot more people are switching away from alcohol to, utilizing other substances like whether it's marijuana or nothing, or they're cutting back substantially. Not so much the other direction that we saw just a few years ago, even where a lot of people during their transition and getting out of the military, they dive really deep into drinking.
Yeah.
I've really seen that start to take off a little bit more as people, using alternative modalities or just canceling it altogether, which is, I think it's a very healthy move, but I was just curious for yourself because you mentioned.
No, I absolutely agree. And I also think that has to do with like the lack of like knowledge that we don't really understand, like the damage it's doing to our bodies.
Yeah, substantially.
And then our, like who we choose, like our environment as well. So it's like, what are we, where are we going? And a lot of people like, again, too, they go back into the same like kind of environments that they joined the military to escape. Yeah. So it can be easy to kind of fall into those routines again, if that's kind of like what they're surrounded with. Yeah. And to be quite honest, like those are the veterans that I want to target. Like you can come help us do this, like come out to the ranch, like just get out here. Like, let's have we can have a barbecue. And that's kind of like what we do. My brother and I is like, my brother is like really good on the grill. He got into like smoking briskets a while back. So like now he's like, he's pretty good at it. So
no better way than bring a sense of community through food.
Yeah. So that I mean, and that's a whole nother thing too. It's just like building that community around something else that doesn't have to involve alcohol. Yeah. I've seen it destroy a lot of people. I don't really want to go into the addiction side, the rehab side of psychology. Maybe it is because I've just seen too much of that.
Sure.
But I do have a heart for that as well. So if I can just be an outlet, if the ranch can be an outlet for people, like that's 100% what I want, just to kind of show them that like, hey, it's like we can do other things. Like we can tackle this problem. When you're ready, if you're ready. So that's definitely one place where I would really like to reach veterans who are going through that as well.
Fantastic. Are you guys accepting applications right now, or how's that work?
Yeah, so in the summer, this summer we have like a barbecue coming up. We're going to do it at the VFW in Helotes, so here in San Antonio. Okay. And that's just going to be like, it's free. My brother's going to smoke some briskets. Oh, perfect. So we're going to go out there. We're going to get people, we're going to kind of see how many people come out. It's really just like bring the community together and kind of let them know like, we may be out in Hondo, but like we're really servicing the greater San Antonio area.
Sure.
And with that, we're going to try to recruit some people out of there. Okay. And then we're going to kind of I'm going to put out something as well to kind of I want at least 5 veterans. It's just the timing of it needs to be kind of like, that's what I have to work out, because it kind of has to be on like when I'm home for the semester. So probably either like August, or we're thinking maybe just even in December because of the weather as well. Sure. Oh yeah. So a lot of honestly, a lot of awesome things to come. It's gained even a lot more traction than I thought it would. I thought it would kind of be this like uphill battle of like getting the word out there. But the small community that we do have at the ranch right now has just been awesome. Like a lot of a very heavy veteran community, and a lot of just like support for people who've had a family of veterans. Yeah. So I mean, like that is really awesome. It makes stepping out of my comfort zone and doing things like this totally worth it. Yeah. Like I love it, and that's like. And again, as I think about like still wanting to be a part of this like camaraderie team environment, like it's like, this is exactly what I wanted, and this is what I want to build for other people around a big passion of mine, which is like horsemanship and ranching. And like down the road, we're going to get some cattle out there and give veterans the opportunity to kind of like work cattle and like get back in touch with like their food. Yeah. So that's just the diet and exercise thing is a whole nother aspect of mental health that like I can also go on and on about that. Your gut is like the main source to your brain, and like and also there's like a lot of mental health too. It has to stems in like with your diet. So that's a whole other aspect of it as well. Right now we're focusing on the horsemanship, but like down the road, it's really implementing like a more holistic like program. And it's like teaching veterans and the community again, like basic homesteading. So it's like gardening, cattle ranching. So the whole operation.
Yeah. and that does establish that purpose again, give you a little bit of an activity, something to step outside your comfort zone. And that's what it's all about. If you're going to tackle mental health, you need to step outside your comfort zone.
Absolutely.
I think it's also really beneficial for transitionary periods, getting out of the military to do nonprofit work. Both myself and Dave and you all did that during our transition out of the military. We got into nonprofit work, and I think we're all good examples of how it's helped us. So I think anyone who's interested or going through their transitionary period or it's coming up, look into nonprofit work, because like you said, it keeps you relative to the community while still being, you're able to step away from it at the same time. You're not, all the way in the community. Like you can still, have a little bit of space from it. But I think it does amplify and make that transitional period a little bit smoother.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said too, going back, like this was still like I still feel in a transitionary period now.
Sure. Yeah.
It is difficult being like in a room of people where most of the time I do feel understood. They don't understand why they think that I'm raising my voice. Like they don't understand why I'm so passionate about X, Y, or Z. Yeah. They don't really understand like where a lot about me really. And I have started to take the time to like explain and remind that's like, this is very new to me. Even again, being in a room full of women, like that was a shock to me. I didn't know how to deal with women who could openly express emotion when I still have trouble expressing my emotions.
Sure.
It's like, so even the fact that like they can be so passionate about something that it can bring them to tears, where it's like, I'm not there yet either. So it's like, it was one, intimidating, and two, it's like I do still feel like an outsider. So when I get to like come home and like be around, like go to the ranch and be around here, it's that this is kind of just makes that worth it as well. Yeah. Because that's also not very easy, and I think that it will get easier as I progress through the program. But this being like I just finished the first year. This semester was the end of the first year, so glad that is over with.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
But finding yourself as a leader is oftentimes isolating, so it's incredible. So here's your platform. If you have anything to say, like one piece of advice to the audience, what they're facing within their struggles or whatever the case may be, what would you say?
Yeah, I think I'd have to go back to that healthy relationships drive resiliency. So like, and that goes back to connection and vulnerability. So it's like, yeah, we have a deep desire to connect, whether that's on social media, whether that's in person, whatever that is. It's like, if we can strengthen those connections in a healthy way, we can communicate effectively. We can start to communicate with ourselves and focus on that relationship as well. I think that is what's going to make us more resilient in the long run. It doesn't always have to be adversity. So I think that's a big one. It's just strengthening the connections in your own life and taking a look with the connection in yourself. It's like, where are you? Check in with yourself. And I think that will go a long way. And just remember, like, just knowing that there are people who like do genuinely care about you. Absolutely. Because that's kind of where I am. Like I'm in the business of people, and I genuinely do care about people. Sometimes I myself like to be a little bit reclusive and just kind of like isolate myself when things get difficult and when I feel very misunderstood. But it turns out it's so much better in the long run when you do reach out to other people and you have those people to lean on.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big one. It's just like strengthening the connections in your life, and that if like we are always there to reach out if you need to, but we are always definitely there to lend an ear, lend a hand in any way.
Amazing.
Sage wisdom.
Where can we find you at?
Yeah, so we are in Hondo, Texas. Again, that's just an hour west of San Antonio. So anybody can come visit us. We just like set up an appointment, like reach out to any of us. We're on Instagram and Facebook at Rustic Ranch TX.
Okay.
And yeah, like all of our information as well, like our email address is all on there. All they have to do, my brother kind of runs the show. His name is Fernando. He's also a Marine. He kind of runs the show down here. He serves as our co-founder and ranch manager.
Okay. Amazing.
So, yeah, he runs the show while I'm up at school. So yeah, it's if anybody wants to come out, and I hope I'll definitely start pushing more about our fundraiser, our annual barbecue. It's to celebrate our anniversary and kind of also raise a little bit of awareness and money.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll have that in July out here in San Antonio. So we're hoping to get a good.
Well, you'll better let us know.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well,
we'll have to join.
Just got to say, thank you for what you do. It's huge seeing fellow veterans get out back into the community and help others. I think that's a fantastic mark of a leader, as well as helping you through your own struggles and your own reintegration back into society. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been an excellent conversation.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I had a blast.
Yeah, so did we. Thank you very much for your time today, Nina. This has been the Medevac Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to head on over to our Instagram at Medevac Podcast. That's Medevac, not Medivac, for some of you who have spelling issues, or medevacpodcast.com. You can find more information there, shoot us an email, or hit the donate button. It'll take you to a link to the Robert Irvine Foundation, and you can donate right there. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Until next time.
Bye.